Hi, I'm Mara Webster within Creative Company, and I'm so thrilled today to be talking about the Disney Plus series National Treasure: Edge of History with Antonio Cipriano, but also just addressing the fact that you go by Cipriano and Cipriano for your last name, because I know that there's a few different versions of how everyone says your name out there. So just wanted to say both versions. So either way, we're correct at the end of the day.
Yeah, Cipriano, whatever you guys want to say, that's okay. I take either.
Amazing. And in starting to talk about this character and this project in particular,
Yeah.
I love that the audition scene that you had for this was one of the very early moments for your character after he's been kidnapped by Catherine Zeta-Jones and her team. And he's in essence saying, yeah, something really traumatic just happened to me, but we should find this treasure and we should be the ones to figure this out, to his friends, because I think that's such a great essence of who he is as a person and how he processes things and how he navigates through the world. And so when you had that as your audition side, how did that give you an immediate sense of just how to play him? Because it sounds like for you, connecting to this character was a very instinctive and early on connection for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, right from the beginning, that scene, and there was another scene that I was just like, wow, this is very much a lot of myself in this character. So it sort of fit like a glove. It felt right to play him. And then in that scene, you know, he is kind of like the cheerleader of the group. He's like, guys, let's do this. Like, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it. And that's very much just kind of how I go through life too. Like I'm there. If you guys need me, I'm always going to be there for you. It's such a fun character to play because he really is just rooting them on, and like, you know, he adds his fun little twist to things, and he's having a good time regardless of if he almost died or not. You know, like he's still there, helping out his friends. So
and one of the elements of him is that he's a huge sneakerhead. I mean, that's what makes him a surprisingly easy target for kidnapping at the very beginning of the show. Indeed. Very little resistance if there's sneakers involved, but it sounds like you went down a real rabbit hole yourself of really kind of wanting to understand the culture, wanting to understand a lot of what kind of goes into that specific passion and connectivity. And so as you were researching that entire culture and a lot of the different products and thinking about what would he really connect to within this, how did that start to formulate and shape certain ideas of who this character was for you?
It's a great question. Yeah, and I haven't really talked much about the sneakerhead aspect of him. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know how many episodes you've been able to see. Have you seen all 5 of them, or have you seen
all the ones that have aired so far?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And in episode 5, you get to see that he has a YouTube channel where he does like the sneaker resale platform it was in a scene before where he talked about having it, and it unfortunately was not added to the show, but that's okay. Because there's still many layers of him in the show. But yeah, no, I mean, I just learned so much. I watched a lot of the YouTube videos of these guys doing sneaker reviews and stuff like that, and I didn't realize how big of an industry it was. And it gives more of a serious tone. As much of, you know, sneakerhead, you don't really think but he's a businessman, you know, and you see him kind of pitching his sneaker business to this big deal guy at the gala, and I gained a lot of respect for the character because, you know, there's a lot of sides to him. He is a goofball, but he's a very responsible guy, and he like knows what he wants. And I see that in a lot of the sneakerheads that I got to watch on YouTube. They're all like, they're incredible people who have a vast knowledge of everything that goes into sneakers. Like they're like, yeah, this is size 11. It's like limited edition, like all this stuff. I don't have like all of the crazy cool details. But I did get really into it, and I wanted to start really buying shoes and doing collecting and stuff, but God, you'd have to like force me to buy a new pair of shoes after like a year and a half of destroying one pair, you know, like that's how Oren and I differ pretty largely. But early on, I did, you know, buy a pair of Jordans and like try to wear them as much as I could, kind of get into that vibe of who Oren is, and what that kind of person would, you know, walk through life, how they would walk through life. But yeah, it really just kind of gains you gain a lot of respect for the character because they are pretty knowledgeable in that aspect.
Absolutely. And with what you were bringing up in terms of that scene as well, where we got to see him pitching his business idea of, I have
Yeah.
an idea for a sneaker design business and this is what it takes. And he's clearly thought about the staffing that he needs, the
Yeah.
resources, everything that would go into that from a very entrepreneurial spirit. And like you said, it gave you so much respect for the character as well. How did you kind of find a lot of those details early on with the earlier scripts that would give you both of those sides of who this character was, where, like you said, he can just as much be the comedic relief as someone who does take things very seriously and has very strong ambitions for himself in the world?
Yeah, I mean, even early on, you hear about kind of the conspiracy theory type stuff that he also is into with the Elvis stuff and all that. He is a very knowledgeable guy, right? Like he might, say some random stuff, but he really does have a lot of knowledge of the world of business and all this stuff. So, you do get to see that kind of stuff. And as the show progresses, his maturity level continues to increase, because they're going on this, besides all the fun, they're going on a pretty serious adventure right here. And towards the end of the show, we start to it gets intense. Like 6 through 10 are a whole different thing, that it gets really action packed, very intense. Like there are high stakes moments in the show, and Oren really does show up occasionally. And in episode 8, there's a particular moment which I can't really talk much about, but you're like, oh, wow, okay, Oren, you really sticking up for yourself and for your friends, and really just like, putting your foot down here. And it's like, wow, okay, good for you, buddy. Good for you. Happy to see that other side of you. It's always been there, but like he really does take a turn in a good way, I think.
I've also heard you mention that you kind of really enjoyed the aspect of him as a character that is really passionate and connected to conspiracy theories. And, that infiltrates into some of the things that he says out loud throughout the show quite a lot, in a lot of his dialogue delivery and certain ideas that he has for the group and how they should go about things. And so was there a similar usefulness for you in terms of going down a very different sort of internet rabbit hole from the sneakerhead culture into kind of looking into what would his understanding and connection and interest be driven from with this?
Ooh. It was fun to dive into both of those. I was careful to not go too far down the rabbit hole of the conspiracy theories, but all of the Elvis stuff that went on, I researched all of that. I researched the secret room, and there was an Oprah interview that actually did happen where they took her into the secret room, and it was like, that's like a real thing that happened, which is really, really cool. And there's also this fact that this conspiracy theory that he drops early on in the show that did not make it in the show, but it was very interesting to me about, Oren sees this Masonic gavel that Jess has acquired from Sadusky's storage unit, and he's like, they're like, about the Masons? I'm like, yeah, dudes built the pyramids, or at least that's what they want people to believe. It was actually extraterrestrials disguised as humans who now run a secret cabal that rules the world. Like he just throws shit out there like that, and it's like, what? Why do you know? Like, what? Like, it's very interesting to play into. And I did try to. I was wary of how far I went, but it was really cool to search some of those and look them up for sure.
And, you're bringing up some of the elements of things that he just says out loud, and just kind of like throws into the conversation with his friends so comfortably. He's known them his whole life. And there must be so much fun in terms of approaching the dialogue and finding the delivery for a character like that, where, there's even the moment where he's like, oh, I'm sweating from places I don't even want to think about. Why did I say that out loud? And he's saying saying all of the things out loud because his brain hasn't caught up with his mouth a lot of the time. Exactly. And so how did you find a lot of the intonation and delivery of a character that kind of talks faster than he's necessarily thinking about what he's saying sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it's so much fun to play with. First of all, it's like the best, because in each take of that scene, you can really just do it a different way, and it'll read a completely different way, right? And it's really just kind of working with the Wibs and kind of where they wanted the character to go. And I felt I knew who the character was. Like right when I got that audition, I was like, oh my God, this guy, he's he's a lot of myself. I do that too. I ramble and I start talking, and as you can see here, I'm like, what am I saying? What am I saying? And then I'll say something stupid and I'm like, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Like it's very someone who I relate to, Oren. And getting to play kind of a lot of comedic roles growing up in high school and stuff like that, it did help with like the comedic timing of certain things, right? I definitely learned, how, because I did comedic roles in front of an audience. I did a lot of theater growing up, and I think that's actually just hitting me right now, that like getting to kind of play with an audience and see what works and what doesn't, helped bringing it to film, and like kind of knowing where I can, how I can phrase things and make it work in that way.
And with your theater background as well, was there kind of like a transference of connectivity to character, in a slightly different way? Because when you're in theater, you're with a character and you're living and breathing that character so much, even though you're doing the same material night after night or throughout rehearsals, and this is your first time taking on a series regular role throughout an entire season and spending that much time developing a character on screen. But I was interested in what some of the similar aspects were, just in terms of the relationship that spending that much time with a character allows you to build with them over time.
Yeah, I mean, you are definitely given a lot more material in a 10 episode span, right? You get 10 hours to really figure out who this person is. And you have 2.5 hours to in a show or a movie or whatever, to get a full-fledged character out. And that's what is so great about TV and film, TV specifically, is you do get to really dig into the character. And in theater, that's where a lot of the behind the scenes work comes in, where you have like a whole backstory, you have a whole life. Like Phoenix had a whole thing. He had a whole life with his family and everything, because you don't meet those characters. I don't know if you know about, I did a show, and I talk about my family in it, but they're not actual characters in the show. So you have all of this room to kind of just imagine what that life is. So both aspects are very, very fulfilling. And it's I would love to do both all the time, forever, for sure.
It's amazing, and with Oren as well, in terms of his life and relation to other characters. What's so great is you're getting to play him in this really centralized friendship group of people who've grown up together. So there's that incredible connection and kind of all these little nuances that you have the space to be able to create. And so what were some of the elements that you wanted to bring into the language, the mannerisms, the actions, the interactions with the rest of the cast that really would reflect that level of history and comfort and trust that they have with each other?
Yeah, I mean, we also got so lucky with not only 10 episodes, but we basically had a built-in friendship since like 3rd grade, right? Like they mentioned that we have been friends forever, right? So it's already icing on top of the cake, right? We have so much information, and it also helped that when I got to Baton Rouge, we all became best friends in real life. So we were able to add, even on top of like the chemistry that we already had, we are able to add fun little things, and like little, when Tasha's like, Oren, you're ruining the thing. I'm like, Tasha, you're giving me performance anxiety. Like we always sing at each other, right? Like it's just kind of like a thing that we do. So it's so like we were able to add so much fun stuff that we get to do in real life, and the Wibs were so gracious and open to all of those fun little aspects, because it is a show about a group of friends helping each other get through this crazy thing. And God, I love them all so much. They're the best. So
and speaking of the Wibberleys, the Wibs as you call them, as the writers of the show, they've also come from the movies of the franchise as well. And it sounds like they created an incredibly collaborative space with this show in really wanting to have your input and the rest of the cast's input on characters and ideas for scenes and where things would potentially be emotionally or characteristic wise for these characters. And so what was the space that really opened up in Oren as a character for you, and having that sort of collaboration with them on set?
I mean, I think for Oren specifically, just because he he's such a, you know, random out of the box kind of character where you can have so many different like in episode 5 we learned that he can tailor a suit. Like what? You know, like there's so many random things that he can do that it just became a fun little thing of like, oh, what can we, and like in episode 3 some of the accents that he does. I just came to set that day. I was like, can I like do this? And they're like, sure, try it out. And like just having that, having the Wibberleys who like wrote these incredible films and are, you know, could just be like, no, just do what you're told to do. But they're so open and so gracious with us that we were able to add so many fun things. And we tried to squeak in some singing in there. There's actually in episode 5, if you do listen closely at the gala, there may be a second of Antonio singing in there. We'll see. If you rewatch it, you may hear something.
I'll have to rewatch that episode because I didn't catch it the first time, but now everybody's going to be looking for it.
Yeah.
You were also talking a little bit earlier about that idea of this growth and maturity that comes to fruition more with him as the season progresses. And, you know, even just in the first 5 episodes, we can already really see that it went from, oh, wouldn't it be fun to hunt down this treasure? And wouldn't it be cool to find this pot of money, to this becoming something that he's taking very seriously in a different way. Because at the end of the day, as much as it started as a fun idea, the stakes are incredibly real and incredibly high, you know, and he especially was on the receiving end of what that could potentially look like for them very early on. So he understands that wholeheartedly. And so how have you worked throughout the season to really create that gradual shift and that gradual growth into a place of more maturity and more seriousness, but still always making sure that you're kind of bringing him back to the fun and kind of like honoring that core of his personality at the same time?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the first things that they said to me when I first started talking about the character with them. They were like, yeah, we love about Oren is this selfish to selfless arc. That was like a beginning standpoint of what they were like, this is kind of what we're feeling for the character. And I was like, oh, beautiful. That is a lot to work with. That's a lot of fun. And in all of the scripts, you see that, you know, and as I said, towards the end, there's a big maturity switch, and he really is, he cares so much about his friends and helping them figure this out that, you know, it kind of came naturally, the selfish to selfless arc. And that's a credit to the writing, but yeah, it was a joy to play as an actor too. And still the fact that they were able to keep some of the humor and have that is amazing.
And within that same facet as well, was there a consciousness on your part and or theirs to kind of make him a little bit less impulsive as a character as well? Because he, you know, with what we were talking about earlier, he's someone who dives headfirst straight into everything and then kind of assesses things afterwards a little bit. But through necessity, he has to start to really think things through a little bit more before he dives into actions.
Yeah, he definitely does. But there are still moments of Oren peeking out in there, even like right towards the end. Like he's just an impulsive guy who wants to be there for everybody. And, you know, nobody's going to be perfect. Nobody's going to think through everything perfectly except for Jess, who's like amazing and has that, you know, as we see, she has that clue mind, what we call it, where she can really like focus on something and like envision what, you know, all of it. It's incredible what she does. But yeah, I mean, he definitely still has that aspect of like kind of the impulsiveness, and, you know, you see it towards the end where they kind of, I actually can't tell you anything, but there's some high stakes, and he still kind of is like, but yeah, there's definitely, like, you can definitely see a change, a shift in maturity for sure.
And with the fact that, you know, with what we were talking about, with the stakes being quite high and the situations that they're getting into becoming more and more heightened, this is also a group of people who don't have experience with this. So it's really looking at what are their real day-to-day world existences that come into play as they kind of learn more about themselves and find specific skill sets. But it's not that all of a sudden overnight Oren becomes Mission Impossible and knows how to drop through a ceiling to break into a space. They're really all figuring it out as they go along. And so how have you you made sure that as he goes into all of these different stakes and scenarios and situations, that it still always very much feels like someone navigating everything for the first time and just figuring it out along the way.
Yeah, I think honestly, what's great about it is me as a person am confused with a lot of stuff. So I didn't really have to play into that too much. I was just like, what are you saying? A lot of the stuff that Tasha says with like her laptop, I'm like, I still don't know what you're talking about, but I'm gonna help you out. You know, if I can, I'm gonna let you know. But yeah, like these are still very tough and tricky situations that we are in. And yeah, that stuff I didn't have to act. I sometimes I really just didn't know what was going on. And that's okay, because it worked for the character. So that's okay.
And with getting cast on a show like this, you know, you've mentioned in other interviews that, you know, as a kid, it's like you think about the idea of, okay, maybe I could be in Star Wars, maybe I could be a treasure hunter, and this kind of really fulfilling that childhood aspect of, you know, playing a treasure hunter in this show and getting to fulfill a lot of that. And so how do you feel like playing this character and working on this project has really kind of connected you to some sort of very specific like childhood passion in terms of what you're getting to do professionally as an adult at this point?
Oh my goodness. I mean, truly, like a treasure hunter? Are you kidding me? Like there's National Treasure, there's Indiana Jones. Like what? Like you dream of this stuff, truly dream of this stuff. And you know, all of the fun stuff that we get to do in the show. Some of the stunts, like I had a stunt double for episode 2 where there's like the kidnapping and everything, it being kidnapped by Catherine Zeta-Jones. I mean, fine, I guess I'll do it, you know, like what it's like, what is my life? I don't know. It's truly an honor to be able to be in this group of people. And I hope I get to keep doing it, you know, keep finding treasure.
I love that. Well, it's such a joy to hear about what this experience has been like working on the show. So congratulations on the first season. Excited to watch the rest of it. And thank you so much, Antonia.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.